Good day to everyone, and welcome to the first airing of MTOK News, bringing you information of the Christian world on a weekly basis. And because this is our very first airing, we will only be covering a few segments today. However, in future airings, we will be adding on segments. So, our first report is on the recent government restrictions on houses of worship. Now, when COVID-19 first hit, we obviously had issues, with the mitigation of or restriction of certain events in order to stopgap the spread of this virus. And one such thing was restricting houses of worship, even closing some down. Such orders came in October, November, and December from states like California and New York. Now, for New York, they had faced a court case, which they were sued by several Christian organizations on those restrictions of limiting the people in those houses of worship or even shutting them down. However, the Supreme Court, as it went to the Supreme Court, they had decided in a 5-4 vote to order the reopening of those churches. Now, in California, Governor Gavin Newsom faced the same thing. However, it was not taken to the Supreme Court. It was stopped at the state level when a state justice had ordered or put a temporary order in place preventing from the new COVID restrictions from coming out. Now, this was considered a big win in the Christian church. The reason for that is that we don't hold to the government orders. There is a separation of church and state. That doesn't mean we're not going to take measures to protect our people who are gathering in worship services. However, these orders must come from the church leadership to shut down these individual churches or limiting the placement in these churches. As why there are religious leadership. Secondly, another report came down as the first Congress met. The opening prayer had some people baffled, as the pastor or congressman who brought the prayer had ended off with praying to a monotheistic God, which not much of an issue until you hear who he prays for, which he considers a monotheistic god, Brahma. The big issue is that Brahma is a Hindu god, which is not a singular or monotheistic religion. Hindu is polytheistic, which means that they have a canon or a pantheon of gods. And as such, he also ended off the prayer with a man and a woman. Now, most of you who are in a Christian church will often hear the word amen at the conclusion of a prayer. However, amen does not mean or refer to gender. Amen means so be it, or let it be. No reference to gender. So a lot of people were baffled as to why this pastor had said it. And in an exclamation, this pastor came down and said that he just wanted it to be more inclusive. There were a lot more ways to have this, prayer to be more inclusive. But using the term amen and a woman, using the term amen to bring inclusivity in the congressional hall, it is not a proper way, considering that amen already has a definition, not reference to gender, but to a culture that had already predetermined what it was supposed to mean. And this is not just from Christianity, but from Judaism as well. So now to John with our international news report.
All right, well, thank you, Dustin, for the intro and those first couple of stories. So, we are here, and I'm going to do the international report. So, to give a brief understanding, we will be talking about Christian persecution today. To kind of just bring people up to speed on what that is, we're going to go over a couple of countries where Christianity is either illegal, dangerous, or discriminated against. So, recently, there was the top 50 worst places for Christians to live, the, most persecuted countries for Christians. Now, we're not going to go over all top 50. We're going to go over 10. And I'm going to briefly describe what kind of persecution goes on there and kind of just bring you up to speed so that if we report on this stuff later on in the future, you guys have an understanding of what's happening. All right? So, number 10 on the list is India. So in India, there are Hindu extremists who believe that anyone who lives in India should be Hindu, and they will use violence to get rid of both Christianity and Islam in the country. They target Christians particularly from a Hindu background. They are falsely accused, they can be attacked and sometimes killed, and they also face tremendous pressure from their families. Businesses owned by Christians who refuse to reconvert may be boycotted. Many don't have contact with other Christians because of isolation, and already 9 states in India have adopted anti-conversion laws, although more are suspected to follow. Very few are actually convicted under these laws, but cases can drag on for years. They have been, and this one is more recent, they have been intentionally overlooked when it comes to the distribution of food and other forms of COVID relief aid. This especially affects the poorer castes because they've already lost their means of income due to the COVID pandemic. Okay, so that's India. Number 9 is Nigeria. So more Christians are actually murdered in Nigeria for their faith than in any other country. Christians are murdered or they have their property destroyed. Men are often killed. Attackers are seldom brought to justice. Christian women, unfortunately, suffer abduction and rape and are sometimes and often forced to marry Muslims against their will. The Nigerian president has tried to force Islamization since 2015, and many Christians end up residing in camps for internally displaced persons, or IDPs. You'll see that term a lot in the future, so make sure you memorize it. Boko Haram and others are really responsible for initiating this violence, my bad. Nigeria is actually now breaking into the top 10 for the most persecuted countries for Christians to live in, particularly because this violence is spreading. Reports seem to indicate the government is either unable or just unwilling to protect their Christian citizens against the Islamic violence, and attacks have not abated during the COVID pandemic. So particularly Christians who stayed home during the pandemic have been vulnerable to attack. Christians are more vulnerable in the northern and middle belts of the country, though the violence is now spreading into the south, where there is a Christian majority, through the government's attempts to Islamize the country. My bad, guys. So that's Nigeria. Number 8, Iran. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys this stuff is not going to get any easier to hear as the list goes on. Please be warned. Number 8 is Iran. So Christians from Muslim backgrounds are oppressed by their government, but also by family and community. Pastors and members of secret churches have often been arrested and given lengthy prison sentences after being raided. The charge is against national security, but the Iranian government views conversion to Christianity as attempted undermining of Islam by the West. So that's why they label it as crimes against national security. Many Iranians are nominal Muslims, so this does give a degree of acceptance to Christian converts. The stricter ones have been known to persecute their own families right at home. Armenian and Assyrian Christians are recognized and protected by the state, but they are still treated like second-class citizens. Here's an example. They are forbidden to tell others about Jesus, and they are not allowed to speak in Persian during church services. One Christian was arrested and put in solitary confinement for 36 days. I will not share their name here just to protect their privacy. But that's a brief summary of Iran, guys. Number 7, Yemen. Leaving Islam in Yemen is forbidden. Therefore, Christians can easily face the death penalty. Anyone in Yemen is automatically considered Muslim. So Christians, again from a Muslim background, face threats from militant Islamic groups. Tribes will also kill or banish converts. Christians may face discrimination, even being denied treatment at hospitals. And due to the secrecy Christians must maintain, it is difficult to pin down exactly how much they are persecuted. So, for instance, while the reports of violence are low, this may be because the Christians are hiding in secret. And so we don't have the best numbers. And this has grown worse over the past year. Again, brief pause real fast. You'll see that on this list a lot of the times, COVID is used as an excuse in some instances to attack Christians. So that's number 7 is Yemen. Number 6, and this is Eritrea. And guys, I'm not going to lie, I had no idea what this country was until I started. I do apologize, guys. I need to educate myself a little more. So Eritrea, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So non-traditional Christians face persecution from not only the government, but the Eritrean Orthodox Church. The EOC is the only government-recognized church. The government monitors all citizens, launching raids on Christians to seize Christian material, as well as damage any house churches. They may be arrested and held without trial, often in inhumane conditions. Worse, their loved ones may not even know where they are or if they're still alive. A report in June 2020 by the UN said no progress had been made to address the human rights violations in Eritrea. Christians who are not part of the EOC or who come from Muslim backgrounds are often denied much-needed social services. It is also illegal to evangelize, according to one Christian prisoner. Again, will not share their personal information, guys, but you can look all this up on your own. Violence continues to grow stronger in Eritrea. Most vulnerable are Protestants and other Christians from Muslim backgrounds. So over in Eritrea, you have the Muslim government, and then you have the EOC, or Eritrean Orthodox Church. If you don't belong to one of those, you're in trouble. Number 5, Pakistan. Christians are considered second-class citizens in Pakistan, especially any who convert from Islam. You're going to hear this a lot, guys. Anyone who converts from the state religion is ostracized at best and persecuted at worst. So, Christian girls are often abducted and raped and then forced to marry their attackers. Usually they are also forced to convert to Islam against their will. Now, while Christian churches do exist, they face intense persecution from society. Also, Pakistan has very strict blasphemy laws, which are strongly defended by militant Islamic groups. Christians were forced to flee. This is a recent story. Christians were forced to flee Charar Lahore. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. There was a pastor who was arrested for sharing a Facebook post. Mobs threatened the Christians in the community with arson. They can face death simply for what the people call defiling the name of Muhammad. Many Christians have been attacked by mobs for alleged blasphemy against Islam and can suffer from acts of arson and other forms of violence. Mobs in Pakistan are generally given free rein to act, whether through pressure or fear. It seems that the government is not willing to try most of them. Number 4. This is not getting any easier, guys. I'm just warning you. But this is just places we want you guys to keep an eye out for and to pray about. Number 4 is Libya. So Libya doesn't have freedom of speech or religion, and church life is very hard. The vast majority of Christians in Libya are actually migrant workers, with only a small amount actually being Libyan. Family and community will put intense pressure on Christians from Muslim backgrounds to reconvert. Christians also face the possibility of being abducted or murdered by militant Islamic groups. Again, you're going to hear that a lot. Public sharing of faith is illegal. Doing so may result in violence or arrest. Since there is no central government in Libya, it is unlikely Christians will receive justice when attacked or killed. Believers may face many horrible acts such as abuse or extortion. They may also be forced into hard labor or prostitution. Violence has only increased in Libya, affecting all areas of life. All Christians are vulnerable, though particularly an area where militant Islamic groups basically have free reign and maintain power. Those who try to migrate from the country may be forced into detention centers, if not directly handed over for punishment and death. It's getting harder. Okay, so that's Libya. Number 3 is Somalia. So in Somalia, you can't admit public faith, and there is no church life. Islam is considered a very crucial part of Somalian identity. Converts may be harassed, intimidated, or even killed by the members of their own family or community. Christian women, again, face rape and forced marriages. Particularly in Somalia, we struggle against Al-Shabaab, which is a Sharia law advocate group, a militant Islamic group advocating Sharia law. If you don't know what Sharia law is, guys, go ahead and look that up. I'm not going to go into detail on it here. This also poses a threat to Christians, this group does. They will execute believers when they discover them, particularly if they come from a Muslim background. There that is again. Christian men are often abducted, and this leads to trouble for their entire family, seeing as how the men in Somalia usually end up being the providers. So this leaves their family without protection, or what's the word? This leaves their family unsustainable, and they are often seen as a stain on the community. Any suspected Christian convert is closely monitored, not just by militants, but by family elders as well. Any Christian in a leadership position faces particular danger, as the militant Islamic groups have intensified their hunt for Christians in the past couple of years in Somalia. Islam is seen as essential in Somalia, and conversion from it to Christianity is almost like a death sentence. That is Somalia. Guys, we are almost done. I know this is hard to read, and this is hard to hear. Trust me, guys. Researching it was hard, but we need to get the word out there. Number 2 is Pakistan. Conversion from Islam to Christianity is very dangerous in Pakistan. New believers face the choice to either flee or die. Afghanistan. Why did I say Pakistan? Afghanistan. Conversion from Islam to Christianity is very dangerous. New believers face the choice to either flee Afghanistan or die. Families are encouraged to disown believers if they don't outright kill them. Leaving Islam is also labeled as a sign of insanity, and new believers may be imprisoned in a psychiatric hospital. Afghanistan is considered only slightly less oppressive than number 1 on the list. There is no safe way to be a Christian in Afghanistan. And I do apologize for accidentally saying Pakistan again. We already did Pakistan. Alright. Number 1. Guys, be ready. So number 1 is North Korea. So the consequences of being a Christian in North Korea can involve being taken to a forced labor camp, being labeled a political criminal, or potentially execution on the spot. All family members are taken. Estimated number of imprisoned Christians is anywhere from 50 to 75,000. Or to 70,000 nationally. Secret police will carry out raids to discover Christians. On top of this, children are encouraged to report any signs of faith in their homes. This is now the 20th year in a row in which North Korea is ranked the most oppressive to Christians. No Christian is safe, and in fact, in China, there are agents of North Korea tasked with locating any North Korean Christian who makes it past the border. Despite all these persecutions, guys, I want to wrap this up on a good note. Despite all this, the faith of our brothers and sisters in all of these countries continues on. They continue to share the gospel, and there are certain groups that provide aid and Bibles, food, shelter, all of that. And we want to quickly say a special thanks to Open Doors. They're where we got the list from. There's going to be a link in the description if you guys want to read the full 50. And if you want to double check anything I said also. So, yeah, that's really it. So, thank you very much. And we will go now back to Dustin in the studio.
Thank you, John, for that very important report. And I hope everyone heeds and understands the importance of that information. And to our top story tonight, on January 7th of 2021, Sudan joins with United Arab Emirates and Bahrain in a peace treaty with the nation of Israel. Now, this is very important as these nations have always been in contest with each other. Now, hopefully, this will bring a lasting peace between these ideologically different parties. However, they have been dubbed the Abraham Accords, which does recognize the common ancestry between these two ideologically different nations. And hopefully, again, it brings a lasting peace and new peace treaties, new trade deals, as well as increased diplomatic relations, and hopefully bringing the truth to many nations across the Middle East. Thank you guys for staying with us. Good night.